Closing Time with Jeff West. Today I'm really fortunate. My guest is the Honourable Rob Flack, Ontario's Minister of Affairs and Housing. Before entering provincial politics, Minister Flack built a successful career in agricultural business, which gave him some first-hand experience with the opportunities and challenges facing Ontario. Since being elected as a Member of Parliament for Elgin Middlesex, London, he served in several cabinet roles before becoming Ontario's Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Welcome, Mr. Flack.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I'm just glad you got the title right at the end, because at the first you said Minister of Affairs. Well, no.
I did.
Municipal Affairs.
Yeah, I'm glad we corrected that. I noticed as I was reading it, because I had it written down. I'm like, oh, that's not correct.
Well,
yeah,
we'll get that one right. So no, I'm glad to be here and glad to be on your podcast.
Yes, well, I'm happy to have you. As Ontario's Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, what are your top priorities over the next 12 months?
Well, it's really two ministries, Jeff. You take municipal affairs, obviously they go hand in hand, but we've got a big election coming up this fall on October 26th. So all 444 municipalities are going to get a new council of some kind. Repeat, some new, some have retired, some are running for the first time, some are running from many times over. So, and even like here in St. Thomas, Mayor Preston isn't running again, so we're going to have a new mayor. So making sure that is set up for success is an important part of our role in this ministry. And with respect to housing, there's many things on the go, and I'm sure we'll talk about many of them today. But when I take a look at priorities in the ministry, number one, what I learned pretty quickly in this job when I got it, and I traveled the province, north, south, east, and west, is that it takes too long and it costs too much to get housing built in Ontario. And whether I'm talking to OREA, the Ontario Real Estate Association, or I'm talking to local home builders or local councillors, municipal leaders, local business folks, we just take too long to get housing built. And we don't have a housing crisis per se. We have a housing affordability crisis. It's getting better, but our focus over the next 12 months is to continue to create the conditions to get more homes built faster. Governments don't build homes. Home builders do. We have to create those conditions along with our municipal partners to make sure that job gets done effectively.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned affordability, because that's obviously right now with the cost of everything. Housing is one of the biggest concerns for Ontario and for people in Ontario. Where do you think the province has made the most progress, and where do you think we need more work?
Well, I would say 3 pillars to progress would be, first of all, we implemented 8 key pieces of legislation in the last year and a bit. 3 of those bills, Bill 1760 and Bill 98, had a lot to do with it takes too long and it costs too much. So we implemented some key pieces of legislation that, for instance, standardizes the building code right across the province. So whether you're in Windsor or Wawa, whether you're in Pickering or Pembroke, the code is king. You can't have all iterations, municipal to municipality. Number 2, we deferred development charges, and I'm sure we'll get into that in this discussion a little bit, until occupancy, which gave home builders a little better cash flow to get shovels in the ground and get the job done. We've eliminated unneeded studies or standardized the studies that municipalities can ask developers, builders to do in terms of getting shovels in the ground. We're standardizing that, and we're standardizing the official planning process. It can take years upon years upon years to get an official plan done, and often hampering the ability to get a building permit in place. So all these legislative, bureaucratic, red tape, mind-boggling exercises that we go through day in and day out across the province are changing through Bill 1760 and 98. Other pieces in there as well, but that's number 1 pillar. Number 2, you probably remember on March 25th, the Premier announced that we were eliminating the HST for 1 year only on purchase of a new home. Whether you're a new home buyer, you're buying your forever home, you're a senior wanting to downsize, any new home built, that you've got a deal in place before the end of March next year. So that's a game changer. Second pillar, that's a 13% savings on a new buy. Pretty significant. If look at $1 million house, that's $130,000. And if you listen to the Prime Minister when we announced the development charge reduction, that included in that could be up to $200,000. So that's significant. So legislation, HST, and finally, as I just touched on, reducing development charges has been key. You know, we charge a lot of money in this province, not so much as St. Thomas. St. Thomas is a guiding light in terms of development charges. They're very low. But in the GTHA, Greater Toronto and Hamilton area, those charges can be punitive. They are punitive. 150 to 200,000 on a single family home. It's just unacceptable. We're lowering those costs. We're making sure that we get that done. And when we announced on March 30th, the $8.8 billion development charge reduction program that municipalities can apply for, we'll talk some more about that, I hope. That's a game changer as well. So legislation, HST, and reduction of development charges, again, lowering the time, lowering the cost to get shovels in the ground, making housing more affordable.
Yeah, and I know the HST, I know you had a lot to do with that. I saw you speak at the Home Builders Association about proposing that to Doug Ford, and that the plan has gone forward. I've had a couple of questions from constituents that live in our area, my personal clients, as well as a couple of the builders. Not so much the builders, but some of their sales reps have mentioned things to me like, well, what's going to happen next year if this is a 1-year plan? What's going to happen when suddenly the HST gets put back onto new builds? Are the general public now going to be saying, well, kind of the opposite of what's happening now, where new builds are flying off the shelves and residential resale, the brakes have slammed on. So what's going to happen to those builders next year when the HST is added back on? Is there any chance that there's going to be an extension to the HST rebate, or is this just a 1-year plan to get things moving?
It's a 1-year plan, Jeff. Always was meant to be that. Again, it's setting the table, creating the conditions, getting affordability, kickstarting the house building economy. This province, house building is an important part of our economic picture. Well over 100,000 jobs depend on having a healthy home building sector or construction sector. With the HST reduction for a year and the DC reduction plan, we are protecting those jobs. And remember, our economy is strong because we're employing more people now than we did 8 years ago. It's crucial that we get that job done, and we're doing it. So that being said, it's a 1-year program. We're hoping again to get some momentum. And we're creating competition. I'll give you the best example. In 2023, we reduced the HST off purpose-built rentals. It was quiet. It didn't meet a lot of fanfare. But last year, the last 2 years, but especially last year in 2025, it was record purpose-built rental starts in the province of Ontario in our history. And this year, we're off to a raging start as well. The HST is working on new home purchases. That being said, it's a 1-year program. Let's kickstart it. And also to backstop that, and we'll talk about infrastructure, we've got the DC reduction program, which is also going to help affordability in a big way across our region and across the province.
Okay, that's fair. I have a client who he bought his property in the heart of COVID, which we are seeing a lot of, as a realtor, I'm getting a lot of those phone calls now with the interest rates going up from where they were at, that has basically a 4-year-old home. He paid $1 million for it and can't sell it at $859,000 because buyers now are saying, well, why would we buy a 4-year-old home where we could buy a new build with still having a Tarion warranty and still having that coverage? And we're finding, as a realtor, I'm personally finding a lot of my clients that have residential resale homes that are $700,000 and up are having a more difficult time selling because so many people are going to the new builds. So it's become difficult. My client that owns that property, his plan, when I originally listed the house, his plan was to buy a new build. He was going to buy a semi-detached house. We found one that he liked. It was listed for $575,000 at the time with a local builder. He was super excited about it, spoke to the sales rep. They said, unfortunately, Jeff, with the amount of activity, we can't take a conditional offer on the sale of a house, which I do understand that completely. Once the HST was passed into law, suddenly that $575,000 house, the price went up to $620,000. So that was a little bit concerning that suddenly some of the builders now with the HST rebate have increased the price of their homes, which I think kind of defeats the purpose of what the government's trying to do for us to help and kickstart these new builds. Because if the prices are just going to go back up 13% for the builders, it seems to be a problem. And I don't know if you've heard of that or if you've had other situations like that or phone calls, but I found that personally with one of my clients.
Yeah, so couple things. First of all, if that's gone on, let me know. We'll dig into it.
Okay.
I've been assured by the Ontario Home Builders Association that that's not going to be the case, and we will hold them accountable, and they will hold the builders accountable. That is just plain bad business and not fair.
I agree.
Fair ball. So I do not support that in any way, shape, or form.
Great.
It's always a risk whenever you bring out a program that people will try and game the system. We have to do our best to make sure that they don't do that. So that's number one. Number two, the concern about prices dropping. So I get it. I fully get it. That being said, people that are buying homes usually buy it for the long term, right? So
Correct.
You can be in your starter home, you can graduate up to your forever home, or someday you're going to downsize perhaps, whatever it may be. But if you get in the housing game, I don't mean game like you're playing a game, but if you get into the housing continuum, put it that way, you're playing the long game. So when I bought my first house, and I've owned 3 or 4 homes, I can tell you with every one of them, when I bought them, within a year or two, they were worth less than what I paid. Interest rates, the economy, what's going on, all those factors affect housing prices. Yes, the HST has had an impact for a year. We're doing other things to lower the cost as well, too. But I would say this to the COVID example, and you're in the business every day, and I remember it was almost a frenzy that took place. Like, hurry up. You can sell your house for more than you're asking. We'd never seen that. It
was awful.
It was just, it was ridiculous. And you knew it would come home to roost, that just was not realistic. So people in a frenzied market overpaid. Interest rates were virtually zero. So they stacked up their mortgages and that's their decision. But if you're going to own a home, it really shouldn't be a speculative buy. Look at what happened with the condos in Toronto. People were speculating, trying to flip them. And finally, we reached a point where last in and as the last out, they're going to lose some big money on a speculative basis. But I know people that bought condos in the last couple of years in Toronto that are upside down on them. And I don't mean they're broke, but they're not worth today what they were when they bought them. But they're in it for the long haul. They're younger people. So over time, I take a look what I bought my house for in Dorchester, and it went down. It's gone down a couple of times, up and down, throughout the 30-odd years we've owned it. But overall, it's been a fantastic investment, and it's the one thing we have to keep alive in this country, in this province, in this community, keeping the dream of home ownership alive. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. You're still going to have to work hard, save, and sacrifice, but the dream has to still exist. And I would encourage everyone who's in the game to look at it from the long-term perspective. I still think houses are going to be worth more in 20 years than they are today, but there's always going to be those ups and downs in between, and that's just the nature of the housing industry.
Yeah, very similar to the stock market. There's ups and downs, but sometimes you have to stick it out for the long haul. And I really struggled during COVID. I was fortunate that primarily I prefer to do the listing sides. Once in a while, I find a great buyer, like someone you might know, and I'm happy to represent them. But again, it was through one of my listings where I meet people. And during COVID, I hated representing buyers because they had no home inspections on a 100-year-old house, cash offers that were well over market value. And agents, we could see this coming. Unfortunately, money was being printed and interest rates were so low. It was awful. An awful time. And unfortunately for a lot of people now that bought at that time now just can't afford to stay in their home because some of their mortgage payments are going up $1,500 a month. And with the cost of groceries and gas, they just don't have that.
And that's where affordability crisis. It is.
It is. And that's where it's getting difficult as an agent to talk to people who put 5% down on a $700,000 house and their house is worth $600,000. They have no equity to move.
That's what happened in the condo market in Toronto. People would put down 100 or 200,000 on a condo and hoping to close in 2 or 3 years and then flip it for more than they paid. And now it's time to close. And the bank saying, you want to close, you need more money because you don't have any equity left. And they're saying, no, hand in the keys back. We're not going to close. And so it's caused all kinds of grief in Toronto. Again, speculation doesn't always work in the housing game.
Yeah, I agree. Now, some people that are in the resale market feel like right now they're kind of competing on an uneven playing field because, the new builds have the HST. Is there anything that the province can do or is planning to do that can help existing homeowners while still encouraging the new construction part of it?
Well, I think the thing that we're doing, again, remember, governments aren't in the housing business. Well, we invest in supportive housing, but that's up to the free market. And our job is to make sure that legislation is in place to protect home buyers, new and resale. Our job is to create the conditions, get the costs lower, the government impact, whether it's taxes, whether it's development charges, et cetera, and help affordability stay on the menu of housing in the province. So we are going to continue to do what we've been doing, and that is to tackle red tape and bureaucracy that goes on at the government level, municipally across the province. I hope we can talk more about the development charge reduction program, which is huge. I'll give you a story. When I bought my first house in 1983, I paid $54,000 for it. It was a beautiful little starter home. It was a resale, brick house, no garage, no hardwood, no granite, arborite. They had vinyl floors, nice vinyl floors in the kitchen, carpet throughout, basic windows, a nice house. It's still there in Guelph today. I paid $54,000 for that house. I didn't pay HST. I didn't pay development charges. I didn't pay extra municipal studies, no hidden taxes, and away we go. The difference was interest rates were 19%.
Yeah.
I had $16,000 down. I took out an open mortgage, and hopefully and thankfully, I was hoping, and it worked out, interest rates came down, and I remember I was so gloriously happy when my interest rate was at 12%.
Yeah.
And I died and gone to heaven. And I was making about $30,000 to $35,000 a year, but I could afford that house. Take that house in Guelph today. It's $1 million plus or minus. Same house. I drove by it not long ago. So think about the down payment you'd have to have. Interest rates are what, 4 or 5%? The person in my position, the income I'd have to have, they can't afford that house. It's gone crazy. So part of it is the price of land. That's a big issue.
Oh, yeah.
Lot prices are, it's crazy high.
Crazy high.
Just, that's got to come back to reality. Costs of construction, but the HST, DCs, all these programs have certainly brought unaffordability to the forefront. And we're changing that. And that is our primary, whether it's new builds or resales, we have to keep the costs, the bureaucratic costs down. And that's what we're doing, allowing the market to right itself as it sees fit.
Yeah, and we may as well talk about the development charges because, my next questions, it was in regards to things like municipal approvals, like even getting a building permit to do work on a house. There's so many hoops that have to be jumped through, and sometimes the renovations stop for 3 weeks until the permit has been issued. So there's a lot of barriers for sure. And if you want to talk more about your development, what you're doing to help with development charges, that would be great.
So development charges are a tool that came in the 90s. And think back to Ontario post-Second World War, and even before. We got water pipes, we got sewer pipes, and we got our roads. We've got a lot of infrastructure in the ground. People don't see it. Hydro lines, all that infrastructure was paid for mostly by the provincial government. Yes, municipal as well too, but a lot of that infrastructure went in the ground. New home builds were not charged. There were some lot levies and whatnot throughout the period of time, but not to the extent today. So in the mid-90s, as governments grew and provinces and countries grew in population, and healthcare costs and other, costs in the province escalated, we no longer had the wherewithal to build all this infrastructure. So municipalities came up with the notion, along with the province, to charge a development fee, a development charge on every new build. So in other words, the line was growth pays for growth. So you need a sewer, you need wastewater, you need water pipes, you need to be able to turn on the tap and flush the toilet, right? You need to be able to have a road, you need to be able to turn on your lights. So especially with water, housing enabling water systems, they charge these development charges. So you'd pay so much at closing, a development charge fee. Over time, municipalities realize, well, this is kind of a hidden tax. I don't have to charge it to my everyday mill rate, but as a new home buyer builds, I can charge this fee and build up funds to pay for needed infrastructure down the road. And not only, for parks, for recreation, there's 21 different categories you can put a DC
wow.
into in this province. So over time, it's amassed into billions of dollars. So if you take a look at the province of Ontario today, there's 12 to 13 billion dollars sitting in municipal savings accounts, municipalities' savings accounts, collecting interest. And our frustration was, hurry up if you're going to put the infrastructure in the ground, because without that infrastructure, you don't build homes. So we want to see it put in the ground faster, which we've tried to do through legislation. But we also know it's also causing a great unaffordability crisis. So in London, I think it's the low 40,000s for a new home build. In St. Thomas, it was 20. Why the difference? Good question. You go to Vaughan, or in the GTA, they're $150,000+ per new home. So what we did, along with the federal government, to bring affordability back in line, is we said, okay, the province is going to put $4.4 billion into a pot, along with the federal government, $8.8 billion over 10 years. And what we've asked all municipalities to charge development charges on new builds is to reduce their fees, not 100%, by a minimum of 30%, and we will give them, they can apply for key infrastructure projects that they've got in their capital plan. They can apply for those, and we're negotiating those right now. And if they lower them a minimum of 30, they can go higher. They get higher points. If they do, they can apply and get this infrastructure support over the next 10 years. So it's not a 1 or 2 year program. They'll know they have this funding stream for 10 years. So it's huge. July 13th was the last day you could apply for it. And as such, we had well over 150 municipalities throughout the province apply and oversubscribe. People were smart. They over-asked, knowing that trying to hit the moon, they'll probably hit a star. So we're going to have those agreements in place in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And I'm sure St. Thomas and London will do very, very well in the program because they both applied, which is good news. So think about that $8.8 billion being put into infrastructure. Now I'm going to put it into perspective, Jeff. We've already committed $4 billion up till now in different programs, building faster funds and housing enabling systems. You've seen me make announcements throughout Elgin County respecting that.
Yep.
So if you add that to the 8.8, you're at 12.8, $13 billion. In this province, the Ontario Sewer and Water Main Construction Association estimates we need $200 to $250 billion over the next 10 to 15 years to not only pay for growth, put new infrastructure in the ground, but to replace all that aging infrastructure that's been around for decades and decades and decades.
Yeah,
so
we're seeing that on Talbot Street.
Yeah, you're going to see it too in London. Look, Woodstock or in Oxford County, they replaced a sewer pipe somewhere, and when they dug it up, it was made of wood. And in Toronto, I was with Mayor Chow, and I was with the Minister of Housing, Gregor Robertson, federally, and I was talking about an idea that I'll throw here in a minute about a municipal service corporation, and it's a way I think we need to go in the future to fund this. But I was promoting the idea, and the mayor said, oh, we had a flood on Jarvis and somewhere in Toronto. And the city manager said, well, yes, Mayor, it flooded out. That was a water main that was put in the 1870s. So when you think about the insatiable need to replace this infrastructure, these programs, there's not enough money municipally, provincially, or federally to just fund that. Yeah. So what I've been promoting, we've got a pilot project in Peel and also probably Simcoe, and there's going to be a lot of these pilot projects, is to set up what we're calling a publicly owned, I emphasize publicly owned, municipal service corp or municipal service water utility, not unlike your power utility locally. Whereas if you turn a light on or now flush your toilet, there's going to probably be a fee. But here's the difference. So why should a new home buyer have to pay for all that aging infrastructure that's depreciated and at the end of life? There just isn't enough money there. And they can't afford it, because if you do that, it makes new home builds unaffordable. So if you borrow money like you do, like a power corp or power utility does, over decades, and that comes to the new home or comes to existing home buyers, you put in a new sewer, new water main, it's amortized over 60, 70 years. It doesn't have to be paid for in the first 2 or 3 years. So that is the model we're looking at, along with communal water systems in rural communities that don't have access to the main trunk lines of water and wastewater. So there's some unique things we're looking at to, again, amortize these costs and make them more affordable over years and years and years, and not put the burden on a new home build or on industry per se, because we have to remain competitive if we're going to continue to attract jobs and attract business. So a long-winded way to say development charges can be punitive. They're needed. I understand why they're there. I just think we got over our skis a little too far. We're going to lower them through this $8.8 billion reduction program. And most importantly, look at new ways to fund infrastructure going forward for decades to come.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. And I think when I had my podcast with Grant Jones from Southwold, I know he applied for some of those development fees.
Well, Southwold has done very well in terms of getting water and wastewater applications approved. And we were out there not long ago putting shovels in the ground to see it done. So
yeah, I saw you there too. So what do you think, like, do smaller cities and mid-sized communities like St. Thomas and Elgin, do you see us having a role in long-term housing strategy? Because I know the media is always so doom and gloom, and it's always the GTA this and the GTA that. But, I'm here representing a small community of St. Thomas and Elgin County, so I want to kind of chat about that. Like, do you see us having an impact on long-term strategies?
Absolutely. Let's talk about St. Thomas. Let's talk about Elgin County. The one thing we have going for us, I know it's a little frustrating at times with construction, and go along Talbot, and you look at number 3. All the construction, but we're growing and we're attracting business. We're attracting investment. We're creating jobs. And remember, Jeff, if you don't have a job, there's a big part of why housing goes up and down in value, employment. And we've been fortunate in this province and this community to be able to attract the likes of Vinode, PowerCo, Maple Leaf Foods to rebuild. I can go on and on and on. We have a strong economic base and it's growing. We're attracting people. And as such, I use the analogy, a rising tide lifts all boats. So when you have a strong economy, when you're employing people and they can have affordability, they have affordability to buy homes, to buy cars, to keep that local economy growing. That's what it's all about. So that's why it's so important that we, and me as your MPP, continue to advocate and fight to get the needed dollars invested here to create those conditions to attract more business, to keep people employed, and to get housing built, because everyone needs a roof over their head. And the dream of home ownership has to be kept alive. And we'll talk about that later on. But locally, it starts with the economy, Jack. With a strong economy, a lot can be done. And I will say, for example, I think some good news coming. The repurposing of the psych lands just south of St. Thomas, I think is going to be a game changer in this area. Stay tuned for some exciting news, I believe, there to build not just estate houses. I want to see all kind of homes there, purpose-built rentals, supportive housing, single-family homes, duplexes, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I had Mayor Sloan on, and we chatted a lot about the new development, and I know a lot has happened even since when I chatted with him a couple of months ago. So yeah, it'll be exciting when that program all comes out for sure. One of the big things right now, first-time buyers are still continuing to face significant challenges. Lenders are getting very, very tight. Are there any kind of additional initiatives that are being considered to help them out, help them get into the market?
Well, I think I would turn to the federal government. I think the means tests for applying for mortgages needs to be reexamined. With house prices coming down, with the HST off, DC reductions, I think they should revisit that. I think that can help a big way in terms of mortgage affordability and be able to be approved for a mortgage. But again, I think it's what we've got in place now. I can tell you with the HST and by the way, we've got housing starts are up over last year, which is encouraging. We're seeing success. Over 5,000 new starts in the province for the first, I think, 4 or 5 months, which is up significantly over the year ago. Like a year ago, we were basically on life support, but we're seeing renewed success. Bottom line, we're going to continue on the path because it takes too long still and it costs too much. And that's what we continue to look at, all the ways we can make life more efficient for home builders and to work with our municipal partners and get those costs down. And we got to talk a little bit about NIMBYism, not my backyard, or some people, I call them bananas, build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone. I understand people want to see the communities. Some don't want to see any change. No. And change can be tough, and I get it. If people get a job in this community, they have the right to be able to afford or rent a home, purchase or rent a home. And we have to do it smartly. I still believe that infill is important. Go in and go up where you can. because our farmland is precious. They're not making any more of it. Look, I come from an agribusiness and farming background. I still have a farm in the Ottawa Valley. Farmers feed cities. Farmers feed all these people. So the two basic things you need to be sustained through nutrition, and you need to have a roof over your head. So those are two very important things in my life that I believe in sincerely. And again, I think locally, St. Thomas is doing a great job. The city has done a wonderful job in attracting the economic investments. You've got great builders. You've got a low-cost structure here. And I think the best is yet to come for St. Thomas.
Yeah, we've been fortunate. I think we're one of the only areas where the actual average price of a home went up at a couple of months this year, which hasn't happened across the province. And obviously with PowerCo and even Amazon coming in, it's really helped us for sure. What do you say to people who are currently waiting on the sidelines to buy or sell? Do you have a message that you want to share with them? I know what I'm telling my clients.
So life is often uncertain. There's never guarantees. And you take a look at the noise the last couple of years, Trump got reelected. That uncertainty, that craziness south of the border, frankly, gave a lot of people cause for pause. And they put their thumb on the pause button when it comes to housing, when it comes to a lot of purchases. You take a look at interest rates and the uncertainty. So uncertainty, markets hate uncertainty. People hate uncertainty. So I would say if you're a new home buyer and you want to get into the market, nobody can pick the exact high and the exact low. At least I've not been able to, and I don't know many people that can.
No.
So I would say to a new home buyer, like I was, like you were, now's a great time. Prices are down somewhat. If you're looking at a new build, affordability got really good for the next year. You don't even have to move in the next year. You just have a deal in place that can be built over the next couple of years. But get in, because you're going to ride that roller coaster, right, of ups and downs, but you're in. And as you're building your equity, it's like, and don't bite off more than you can chew. Make sure you can afford the mortgage you have respectfully, so that if you can weather a bump in interest rates, depending on what type of mortgage you have, but get in and, strap in for the long ride. And, you've got 30, 40, 50 years to live in a home or homes and continue to build equity. It's still the best investment any Canadian can make because it's tax neutral. You don't pay capital gains on your primary residence in this country. You do in the U.S. You get mortgage interest deductibility, but you still have to pay capital gains. This is the last bastion of hope there. The government doesn't touch that equity you have in your home. I believe we have to keep it that way, and I will fight to keep it that way with my dying breath.
Yeah, I think it would be horrific for people if I know my house would be up for sale tomorrow.
It's not even being discussed, Jeff. It's sacrosanct, I believe, in the halls of government, both provincially and federally. No one's touched that.
Good. That's good to hear. Finally, what would you like realtors across Ontario to understand about the province's housing strategy and where it's headed?
Well, again, I've talked to many realtors and Ontario Real Estate Association numerous times, been to your conventions, sat down one-on-one. And what I hear is, they're excited at the fact that we're moving the needle with in terms of affordability. Probably the biggest concern I would say I'm hearing, we talked about it a moment ago from real estate agents, generally is the uncertainty people have to get people off the sidelines to say, let's buy a house. Let's sell our house and buy a new one. Let's sell our house and buy another resale. Let's get into it. Let's downsize. You got to get that wheel turning, that housing economy turning. And so what we're trying to do is take a little bit of that uncertainty off the table. And I would encourage you and your colleagues throughout the province and throughout St. Thomas to think that way. It's a long-term play. And I'm proud of what we've done in terms of legislation to lower the time it takes and cost it takes to get permits and shovels in the ground. The HST rebate is crucial. And DC, I think the DC reduction program is going to be even as big as the HST. So I would say, I think we've set the table. We're creating the conditions, and it's up to you guys to find the buyers and help them understand that the dream of home ownership is alive in this province. I told you the story about my first home, but I believed I could buy it. I believed sincerely at some point I was going to be able to buy my own home. 19% had my hand shaking when I did the deal. couple of years ago, I was in Toronto, and Denise and I, my wife and I, went to the distillery district at a restaurant. She picks them out. I don't even know I don't even know if I could get back there. And we were sitting down, and we were going to have supper, and a server came up, nice young lady, and we were talking, and I was just made Associate Minister of Housing at the time, just in the cabinet. So, of course, I'm kind of keen about housing, so I asked the question, so where do you live? Well, I live in Toronto. Well, what do you live in? Well, I rent an apartment with a friend. There's actually 3 of us live there, and they share sleeping shifts throughout the day because they all have different sleeping shifts because they work shift work. And so it's a dream. You want to build, going to work. What do you want to do? Going to university, blah, blah, blah. And then she started to tear up. I went, oh no, what did I say? And she said, I got to tell you this. I don't believe I'll ever be able to buy my own home. It's unaffordable. I'll never have my own home. And she went on and she was tearing. My parents could do it. I can't do it. I look at Denise. She's starting to tear up. I'm going, no. And I'll tell you that story, Jeff, haunts me to this day, that example, because when you think about people, when you lose hope to be able to own a basic, I think, right in this country, own your own home, it's not easy. As I said earlier, you have to work hard. You have to save, sacrifice, live within your means, but the ability to afford something should be there. And she got my attention, and I think about her every day at some point throughout the day when I'm in this role of Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. So again, I think it's all incumbent on all of us to create the confidence and reduce some of that uncertainty. And we're going to do what we can in government, but it's incumbent on all of us to help create those conditions so people can believe in their dream, believe that they can own their piece of Canada, that quintessential dream to own my piece of this great country. And that's what we're trying to do day in and day out.
Yeah, that's great, Rob. And I have 5 kids at home under the age of 23.
Wow.
I have one we're going to talk about in a minute, but my oldest is renting a place in Port Stanley, a basement apartment in Port Stanley, and she wants nothing more than to own a home one day. But with cost of living, it is a challenge for sure. But I'm telling my buyer clients that I have right now, it is the optimal time to try and get into the market with values as low as they are, because once hopefully we get, the market's going to recover at some point. It always does, highs and lows. But if she can get into my daughter or buyers can get into the market right now, they're going to have some equity when this market recovers without even having to do work on the house. So, and the interest rates are still great. Just over 4% is not horrible.
No.
As you said.
Not 19% or 12.
That's right.
The one thing we have to look at too, Jeff, is, and again, I'll use Toronto as an example, but even here, first-time home buyers, young kids, have to lower their expectations a little bit. You're maybe not going to get granite countertops. You're maybe not going to get a double-car garage. You're maybe not going to get hardwood. But we also have to look at building. The builders have to look at building what the market needs. And I know smaller homes, they maybe don't have the same margin on that, and I respect that. But we as a province also have, I'm going to say this, with respect to supportive housing and, maybe first-time home buyers to a degree. We need to look at repurposing land that we own in this province. So take a look at the psych lands, the hospital land south of St. Let's repurpose this land and put it into housing. It could be an old transportation depot. It could be Service Ontario. Let's turn it into some housing that's affordable, that can meet the demands for first-time home buyers, so it can be attainable, meaning you're getting into that sweet spot to be able to get into the market and build some equity and move on. People talk about wartime housing. I'm not sure that's the best analogy, but we'll go with it. But we have land in this province and in this community. I'm looking outside my office right now at Queso Station, and the lands in front of me are those railway track lands. We can repurpose those, and I know Doug Terry plans to do that. And we should have infill here. We should have affordable housing here for everybody, wherever you are in the housing continuum.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I really, really appreciate your time today, Rob. I end my podcast every episode. I talk about a local small business. Okay. So I give them a little shout out. So today I'm going to talk about Spice Spa. So my daughter Abby is actually an esthetician at Spice Spa, and it's at 108 Ross Street. They have been around. The owner, Tamara, has been around since 2007 with Spice Spa. Davina and Julie are also estheticians there. So if you want to get your nails done or some waxing or tinting, Rob, you can...
My hair, the tinting doesn't work too much for my hair.
There you go.
I always say, Jeff, I had wavy hair. It just kept waving goodbye.
It just kept waving. Yeah.
Maybe the spicy spa isn't for me, but I'll make sure Emily, Jen, and Jenna and Barb in the office go have a visit to Spicy
Awesome.
Spa.
Yeah, it's at 108 Ross Street in St. Thomas.
Beautiful.
So
well
if anybody wants to pop in and see them, they're welcome to do that. Well, thanks again, Rob. I really appreciate your time, and let's get closing. Thanks so much, Rob.
Let's get selling and get closing some deals, and let's keep this housing market moving.
Absolutely.
Keep the dream of home ownership alive, my friend. Let's work together.
Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm glad you are too. Thanks, Rob.
All right.